Hi everybody, thanks for joining us on the South Australian Sports Show. We have got a great show coming up for you, so sit down, get nice and comfy. Greg Edwards, the CEO of North Adelaide, will join us very shortly. Thalia Coots is going to come in, talk about Muay Thai boxing and the crossover between other sports. A couple of superstars in softball, two South Australians not too far away, going away with the Australian team for the World Championships in August in the Netherlands. Vanessa Stokes and Belinda White, very special guests. Rob Popplestone's in, talking about everything that's happened this week in South Australian sport. And Vinny Del Bono, of course, the master taper from the Adelaide Crows, going to talk to us about taping those thumb injuries we get from time to time. But a man who's very busy, been waiting patiently, and I've held him up, Greg Edwards, the CEO of the North Adelaide Footy Club, in to join us. Greg, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks for inviting me.
Always good to have you, mate. Now, a fair bit happens on the ground and the people see what goes on, and we're judged on wins and losses. Of course, we know that. So is the CEO, unfortunately.
True.
But there's a lot that has to happen off the ground to keep a footy team going. Big night coming up for the North Adelaide Footy Club, isn't it? The gala night, what are we calling it? A Roosters night, Saturday the 28th of June at 7 p.m. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the Roosters night, as it is this year. We changed the theme year in, year out. Last year, I think, it was the red and white night, but it's basically the annual biggest fundraiser of the North Adelaide Footy Club, held at the Intercontinental each year. Usually mid-season. We try and have it on a bye weekend, and that's the case this year. Look, we get 300 people there. It raises between $20,000 and $30,000 for the club. We have outstanding entertainment. This year we have a hypnotherapist, a great band, you know, a huge auction. The silent auction is terrific. We have 200 odd items, 15 major auction items. And everyone that goes comes back. So it's actually grown legs over the last 4 or 5 years. It's been terrific.
All the players attend?
It's compulsory for the players. And I'd suggest that 4 or 5 years ago, it would have been hard to make it compulsory to the players. But now it's created a bit of a cult following of its own throughout the playing group. Particularly when you've got a hypnotherapist on board, he's very likely to get a number of players up. And that they come with their partners. We have a lot of sponsors there, vice presidents, coaches. All the coaches are there with their partners, and this year it'll be no exception from the last few years. It'll be terrific. All
right, you're just a game outside the four. The hypnotherapist, the coach would be keen to see if he could get the guys to play a little bit better. That might be something in that.
That might be a question on the night, I'd suggest. I reckon we've turned. It's funny how this happens each year. We've turned about mid-season at the gala dinner 50-50 wins and losses. I think last year we might have been 5-4. The year before I think we might have been 4-5. Hopefully this year we're 6-5 by the time we get to the gala dinner.
All right, there's been a lot of talk about this season, particularly Crows coming in, of course, with their team, Port Adelaide Magpies coming in with their team. Beneficial for the footy club? Has it increased the crowds, or is it, you see it as not a good thing?
I think at this point in time, we're mid-season basically, round 9, I think there's been a significant uplift in crowds over the whole season. There's no question about that. I think some games have still not got the crowds that they would have liked at some games. With regards to North Adelaide Footy Club, our crowds are certainly up from last year, no doubt about it. And we were buoyed on a big crowd against the Crows round 1. I think in general, look, when it came down to it, this is a pretty emotional issue last year. Yep. I've never had so many emails and text messages in all my life from the membership, which has been terrific.
Well, in favour or against, or 50-50? Oh,
look, a lot of people were against it. There's no doubt about that. And look, from a football club, I fully understood that. You know, I didn't have a vote; it was the league director's vote. But I could see the reasons for it and the reasons against it fairly clear. I guess for me personally, it became you know, a lack of alternative probably that got me over in the end. I think it's a good thing. I guess we're going to judge it in 5 years or so. I think the not having the AFL players and not having the AFL teams in the competition may have been a long-term problem for the SANFL from a funding point of view, you know, not having the elite players in South Australia playing all in the same competition. And we don't want anything to affect the pathway that the SANFL creates for young players. So it's really important to keep the SANFL as the premier competition in South Australia. So I guess for me, and like I said, I can understand reasons against it. You know, the lack of integrity and all these things that came up. But For me, it was probably the lack of a really good alternative, and now we have the best players in the one competition, which is terrific.
Yeah, it looks like it's going pretty well. You talk about the pathway, and let's touch on how difficult it is to keep players at the footy club. And you and I just having a chat about it before. A lot of players now leaving to go and play in the country or go and play in amateur league for big money by comparison.
Yeah.
On the other side, you know, the amateur league footy clubs and the country clubs have complained that North Adelaide are poaching their players. Are we losing sight of what's really important here, the development of the players? Do you reckon that's getting lost a little bit?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I've been probably a little bit vocal over the last couple of weeks because we've just had a really good experienced premiership player leave mid-season. So I've been asked a question probably more than I've been asked it before, but I think for me it's really important that we protect the pathway that the SANFL creates, particularly for the young players. And you know, there have been instances, no question, where 18-year-old, 19-year-old and 20-year-old players have been talked into leaving the SANFL and playing for money. They either are at uni, so they need money. You know, they're working part-time, they can't get a job. And I think it's easy to lose sight of just where they're at. And it is a club education issue as well, and we work really hard on our young players and make sure they keep the vision of being a long-term SANFL league footballer and what that actually means at the end of their career. And also, you know, for the ones that have an opportunity to get drafted, we keep that alive too. So, look, it's really difficult for the young players. My biggest issue is where a player commits to play, and mid-season or at some stage during the year, whilst they're playing league footy, decide they want to leave, and you know, that's a bit of a sore point for me at the moment. And I think it is for all the clubs. I think at the end of the season, uncontracted players who are looking to do something else, who aren't enjoying their football at their league club, then that's the decision that they need to make. I get it. But I think once you make a commitment mid-year, it's you know, we need to put some steps in place with those things. Can't just be automatic.
Yeah, it sounds like that, doesn't it? It sounds like everybody needs to get at the table, the round table of footy, and realise they're custodians of the game and what's best for the player. I think your point's the most valid. If a player commits during the start of the year, I think it'd be fair to say, well, you can retire, but you can't go and play somewhere else until that season's over. Yeah, I think so. I think what happened with your club, we won't mention the player's name, we both know who we're talking about, is that, you know, he decided to retire because he had a big money offer to go and play somewhere else, or we assume that's the case. And but we're watching it with the amateur league as well. There are clubs going under because they're trying to compete with money they haven't got. The SANFL clubs probably 5 or 6 years ago were a little bit like that. Salary caps helped a lot in the tightening of that. Do they all need to be on the same page? Do the amateur league and the country league and the SANFL all need to get together and say, let's do what's best for the athletes and what's best for the game, as opposed to we just want to win? Because as soon as it comes to we want to win, that's when all the illegal stuff kicks in. Yeah, gee, it's a difficult one. Look, I think there's got to be, we all have to be on the same page. There's no question about that. The SANFL, I think, needs to and will, I'm sure, in the future, really establish itself in the public's eyes as being the elite South Australian football program. And for I mentioned to you off air before, Phil, that, you know, I had a couple of people say to me, you know, when I made a comment about players being poached, let's say, or going to the country, that someone said to me, well, we take kids out of the country all the time to come to the SANFL. I think that's missing the point. I mean, the pathway to the AFL is through the SANFL, there's no question about it. A lot of players, and our players at North Adelaide, for example, a lot of them don't earn a lot of money. But to have a 10-year career playing for North Adelaide in the SANFL is something that at 27 and 28 years old, 29, 30, that they get a lot of satisfaction out of. They make a lot of friends, they're healthy, we have great facilities, you know, we have terrific doctors, physios, head trainers. You know, we look after employment, their welfare, we supply nutritionists. You know, we do a whole lot of things that just don't happen outside of the SANFL, and I think the SANFL as you know, the top dog, I suppose, of footy here, probably just needs to now put that out there, because it gets lost in the community just what the SANFL represents. I mean, it touches every part of football. Yeah, look, I agree with that, and You know, it's easy when you're older, you have the wisdom of, and we were the same as kids. People would say, when you get old, you go, yeah, I'm never going to get old. So that's never going to happen to me. But, you know, physically, one of the things you talked about your physios and doctors. I mean, life after footy.
Yeah.
You know, we look at Neil Curley, a good example, Curls, isn't it? Fingers going everywhere, and, you know, his body's, he's suffering, he's paying a price, and a lot of guys do. If you've got those guys during the course of your career at the North Adelaide Footy Club, at the end of your career, generally, life after is not too bad. Yeah. And so that gets lost. I always think about Barry Robran in your club, and it's hard not to associate him with North Adelaide. When I spoke with him, I asked him, it was only 2 weeks ago, we were at a function, I said, you know, Barry, if someone came to you now and said, I'll give you $1 million a year to come and play for us in the AFL, would you take that offer? And he said, no, he said, I just wanted to play for North Adelaide. That was all I wanted to do. And we know he's unique and, and an unbelievable person, but you sense that level now with the footy clubs in the SANFL is starting to get back to that. I'm not going to make it into the AFL, but I can be a lifetime player at the North Adelaide Footy Club. Yeah, no doubt at all. I think the biggest weapon that you have in convincing players to stay, and look, and you shouldn't have to convince them, but in I guess directing them into and giving them the vision is players at your club who have been there for a long time. And you know, at the North Adelaide Footy Club, we've got, you know, the Todd Miles, Lee Riswick, you know, those sort of fellas who have been in the SANFL for a long time. I mean, they're the best guys to sit down with an 18 and 19-year-old who's missed the draft maybe a couple of years in a row, and actually give them their vision and say, look, I've been in the system for 10 years. It's the best thing that I've ever done. You know, I didn't get drafted and I stuck at it. And, you know, I'm fit and strong. I love my football. Like, I can pick up the paper and read about it. I can listen to it on the radio. I can talk about it at work and feel proud that I've played at the top level that I could. You know, perhaps we need to be a bit better at that. Using those players more in the context of keeping young players interested. And so, you know, I guess the clubs are all the same. You know, we need to use those resources wherever we can. Whether we have done it or not well enough, I'm not sure. I think we have at North Adelaide, but you're never going to stop all of your players. You're never going to keep all of your players happy. But I think we're going in the right direction. But it is a hard problem. Major sponsors, always a problem in every sport, every code. It's the sponsors that, along with the fans, that keep the club. For you, Stella Holmes is a big one. Yeah, absolutely. How important are they? Oh, they're hugely important. Darren and Liz Peter. Darren's the owner of Stella Holmes. Darren came to us just at the right time. You know, Rob Gerard, who's been a fantastic person around the club, our club patron still, was at the first game of the year this year, Rob, which was terrific. Rob was getting tied up with the soccer and had some other interests going on and taken his focus, which was fair enough. He'd been a terrific person around the club for decades. So we needed to find another major sponsor, and Darren and Liz were there for us right at the right time. We'd sort of discussed sponsorship with him, and when we asked for help, Darren put his hand up, and he's just been fantastic. And he gets involved in all of our events. He supports gala dinners, and he's just been fantastic, no doubt about it. Mate, we've got to go. Just a quick one before we do. Season ticket holders, memberships now, I mean, we're halfway through the season. Is there some way you could still jump on to a membership at the North Adelaide Footy Club? absolutely. Membership, season ticket, home matches. Season tickets are a bit more difficult probably, but certainly general memberships, $70, call the club, call a Lira at the club anytime, 8344 8733 in fact is the number. We generally find that, as we have last year, that as we win games, you can still actually get memberships happening during the year. So we're not far off last year, which was a terrific year for us, membership. We're right there, so jump on. All right, Saturday, 28th of June, big function for the North Adelaide Footy Club. Get in touch with the North Adelaide Footy Club, find out about it. Will be a fantastic night. Should go. Hypnotherapist, I reckon we'll see the players do something funny. Greg, thanks for your time. We've got to take a break. Back with more in a moment.